Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, let me tell you about the latest special from Mike Lindell at MyPillow. The standard MyPillow, normally $49.98 for a limited time only, just $14.88 with promo code Joey. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and see all the specials. There's a limited quantity of just 10 at this special price. That's $14.88 with promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. With the decision desk projecting that the Republicans have won enough seats for them to take control of the U.S. House, this gives the party a trifecta, winning the White House, the U.S. Senate, and the U.S. House of Representatives. We have the latest updates for you. Thomas Homan, who President-elect Donald Trump appointed as his border czar on Sunday, has a clear message for any Democrat governors who oppose the planned mass deportation operation. We have the latest on that as well. Federal employees say that they're feeling dread, experiencing PTSD over the mere thought of President Donald Trump returning to the White House. They're already whining, and he's not even back in D.C. yet. Mark Cuban, who was a vocal supporter of Vice President Kamala Harris during her campaign, faced some backlash on social media after users noticed that he was deleting his post about his endorsement of the vice president. And in a closely watched GOP leadership race, North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer has announced that he will support Senate Minority Whip John Thune of South Dakota. We have the latest on that as well.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, you know, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
As we look towards a new government in January, we know that the GOP has control of the U.S. Senate with 53 senators. Now Republicans are projected to take control of the House of Representatives, giving the party a trifecta as Republicans took the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House, and the White House, of course. Decision Desk HQ projected that the Republicans had won enough seats for them to take a narrow majority in the U.S. House. Right now it stands at 218 to 209. House Republicans ended up making gains over their Democrat colleagues in the election. Republican candidate Rob Bresenheim won the race for Pennsylvania's 8th congressional district over incumbent Representative Matt Cartwright, putting the GOP over. The Hill reported that there were 3 freshman New York Republicans who had unseated their Democrat colleagues. And with his landslide victory just a week ago, President-elect Donald Trump is starting to fill key posts in his second administration, putting an emphasis on aides and allies who were his strongest backers during this 2024 campaign. Here's a look at some of the ones he selected. Of course, we talked about Susie Wiles, the first female chief of staff, who will be taking the controls of the day-to-day operation of the White House. Elise Stefanik will be our next United Nations ambassador. Stefanik is a representative from New York and one of Trump's staunchest defenders going back to his first impeachment. Elected to the House in 2014, Ms. Stefanik was selected by her GOP House colleagues as House Republican Conference Chair in 2021 when former Wyoming Representative Liz Cheney was removed from the post after publicly criticizing Trump for falsely claiming he had won the 2020 election. Stefanik is 40 years old, has served in that role ever since as the third-ranking member of House leadership. Her questioning of university presidents over anti-Semitism on their campuses has helped lead to 2 of those presidents resigning, further raising her national profile. We can expect a lot from Elise Stefanik. Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff. Wow, that's a good one. Miller's an immigration hardliner. He's been a vocal spokesperson during the presidential campaign for Trump's priority of mass deportations. He's 39 years old, was a senior advisor during Trump's first administration. Miller has been a central figure in some of his Trump's policy decisions, notably his move to separate thousands of immigrant families. And since immigration is going to be a top priority of the Trump administration, closing the border and then deciding what to do with those who've already crossed over illegally, we can expect to hear a lot of Stephen Miller. Lee Zeldin will be chosen as the Environmental Protection Agency's head. He is a former New York representative, served He will be the lead of the Environmental Protection Agency. Zeldin does not appear to have any experience in environmental issues, but is a longtime supporter of the former president. He's 44 years old and a New Yorker. He wrote on X, "We will restore U.S. energy dominance, revitalize our auto industry to bring back American jobs, and make the U.S. the global leader of AI." He said, "We'll do this while protecting access to clean air and water." Also, we learned last night that President Trump is expected to appoint Florida Senator Marco Rubio to serve as his next Secretary of State. The New York Times reported that Trump has mostly settled on Rubio after also previously considering him, of course, he was in the final count to potentially be a vice presidential running mate. Since being elected to the Senate in 2010, Rubio has really made a reputation for himself as being a foreign policy wonk. He has a hardline foreign policy stance on China and Iran. On Russia's war with Ukraine, Rubio, like a proposed national security advisor, Representative Mike Waltz, who is another name that was floated yesterday and will be a great national security advisor. Rubio has mostly stayed close to Republican talking points in saying that the war in Ukraine is a stalemate and, quote, needs to be brought to a conclusion. And, of course, as I mentioned, Representative Mike Waltz taking over the national security advisor. This is starting to be a strong team. Now, some people have texted me and emailed me their concern that we have all of these members of Congress taking cabinet-level administrative posts. Well, let me assure you, first off, that Trump and his team are not going to choose someone and put us in jeopardy of losing a seat, a Republican seat in the U.S. House or the U.S. Senate. For example, Senator Marco Rubio, once he resigns from the U.S. Senate, once he's confirmed and resigns, then Governor Ron DeSantis will appoint his replacement. So we know who Ron DeSantis, we know he will appoint a Republican. That's pretty much the same with these other House seats and these others. They will be the governors of those states, in most cases, will appoint their successor. Now, it could get a little tricky, I guess, in New York with Elise Stefanik because we have a Democrat governor and not a friendly Democrat governor in Kathy Hochul. But we'll be bringing you updates on that along the way. As far as the U.S. Senate, many of you have been very active, calling, texting, emailing Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator Tim Scott, encouraging them to support Rick Scott for the Senate majority post that Senator Mitch McConnell is giving up. And this is going to be a close leadership race for sure. They'll be voting tomorrow as the GOP caucus will meet to reorganize with new senators there. North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer announced yesterday that he will support Senate Minority Whip John Thune of South Dakota. Cramer shared his decision in an interview on Fox News, noting his trust in Thune over other contenders. Now, again, Thune faces competition from Senator John Cornyn of Texas and Rick Scott of Florida, who seems to be the favorite. Rick Scott does. I mean, I've seen him all over. So I'm not sure how this is going to shake out. All I would say is I would hope that members of the U.S. Senate, Republican members of the U.S. Senate, after seeing what we saw this past week, that they would recognize that the American people are watching them closely. And all I've heard, I haven't heard a groundswell of support for John Cornyn. I haven't heard a groundswell of support for John Thune. In fact, I've heard quite the opposite. I have heard a lot of people encouraging me to call and to email and to text my two senators to ask them to support Rick Scott of Florida. Has anyone contacted you to encourage your senator to support John Cornyn or John Thune? I don't think so. So I hope that our U.S. senators will forget about the good old boy system and stop slapping each other on the back and do what the American people want. And I believe that is to put Rick Scott in that leadership position. We'll see. Scott has gained backing from some prominent Trump-aligned figures. But President Trump so far has not made an official endorsement, but a lot of people within his, including his kids, his sons, have said, we want Rick Scott. So I think that's a pretty telltale sign that Donald Trump is probably making some phone calls, twisting some arms, trying to encourage his colleagues that we need Rick Scott in that leadership position. That's an important position. A lot of people, we've heard about Mitch McConnell all these years and what he does. The Senate Majority Leader is the person who decides what comes up in front of the Senate. They control the agenda in the Senate. Nothing's going to get to a vote unless that Majority Leader approves it. It's a very important and a very influential post. We need Rick Scott there. So if you haven't already done so, call Senator Lindsey Graham, call Senator Tim Scott, let them know you want Rick Scott. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. This year, I really thought I was going to have to boycott the holidays. I was going to lock myself away and not come out until 2025. But after finding PhD Weight Loss, you can bet I'll be at every holiday party I'm invited to. That's because PhD Weight Loss helped me take control with great confidence, support, and my new healthy body. The best part? PhD Weight Loss did it all without harmful drugs that keep you dependent on them to maintain your weight loss. It's a natural, medication-free approach to weight loss crafted to naturally diminish food-related thoughts, hunger, and cravings, making your weight loss journey more sustainable and enjoyable. Take it from me, I lost 33 pounds. The PhD Weight Loss Program teaches you not just what to eat and when, but also how to think differently about food and finally let go of those cravings and get rid of the hunger naturally. Don't lock yourself away this holiday season. Call PhD Weight Loss today at 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. This has to be one of the funniest things I have read since the election. I mean, we know that the liberals are just standing on their head and whining and crying and talking about how depressed they are and they can't go out and all this stuff. I mean, some of the stories I've heard, some of the stories you have emailed me and text me are just crazy about family members and friends who are liberals and who are literally crying and can't go back to work, which I think is just absurd. But the funniest thing I've heard so far is from the federal employees who claim that they lived through the Trump administration the first time, but saying that they're experiencing PTSD over the idea that Donald Trump is moving back into the White House. They're already experiencing PTSD. Is that not the most absurd thing you have ever heard? During an appearance on CNN's News Central, national correspondent Renee Marsh said that federal employees are scared and anxious about the possibility Trump will conduct mass firings early into his second term. She said, "We are a dystopian hellscape." That is from a federal employee via text message last night, and that is the mindset of many of the 2 million federal workers anticipating Donald Trump's return to office. Trump, of course, on the campaign trail, said that he would reinstate Schedule F, which is a 2020 executive order that would make tens of thousands of federal workers at-will employees and thus easier to remove. Former Trump appointee Ronald Sanders told CNN that the order could be problematic if it is used to enforce and maintain loyalty to the administration. Sanders told CNN the objective is to create space to put loyalists in what were, or what still, are career service positions. Concerns have permeated across the federal government, according to the report, with one Energy Department employee telling CNN, "I would say there's a general feeling of dread among everyone. We are absolutely having conversations among ourselves about whether we can stomach a round two." Well, guess what? Put your big boy britches on and get to work, because you don't have a choice. Donald Trump is going to be your boss. Marsh with CNN claimed that the Schedule F would allow Trump to begin mass firings of employees perceived as disloyal to the incoming administration. She continued, as you know, Trump has obsessed about the idea of federal workers being agents of the deep state working against him and his agenda. Some of the employees who lived through the first Trump administration say they're experiencing PTSD. Look, it's very simple. Government employees serve at the pleasure of the president. Now, I know we have all these civil service positions. That's part of the problem with the federal government. We have too many people who are hired by an administration. I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat. They're hired by an administration and they become protected. I would say to federal employees, if you're doing a good job and if what you're doing is relevant and is needed, you don't have anything to worry about. The people who are suffering from PTSD already, and Trump is not even sworn in yet, they're the ones who know their jobs are worthless. They're the ones who know their jobs, really, they shouldn't be accepting that check from the federal government. They know it's a waste, but they want to keep their nice little agreements and their nice little plush offices in place. President Biden's administration implemented a new rule in April to make it more difficult to fire federal workers. Of course he did. Biden deemed the rule to be a step towards combating corruption and partisan interference to ensure civil servants are able to focus on the most important task at hand, delivering for the American people. Well, look, that's not necessarily the case. Again, that's the problem with our federal government. It's gotten too fat. And in some cases, you can't get rid of them. Well, we need to. There shouldn't be a single job that is protected. The Office of Personnel Management, the government's Human Resources Department, implemented new regulations barring career civil servants from being reclassified as political appointees or as other at-will workers who are more easily dismissed from their jobs. Again, if you're doing your job, you don't have anything to worry about. And new administrations should be allowed to come in and put their own people in place. That's the whole idea. Donald Trump won, so he gets to have his people in there. And the idea that he's concerned about a deep state, that's a valid concern. Because too often, a new administration cannot accomplish the things that the American people put them in place to do because you got some bureaucrat who's fighting it every step of the way. So, yes, the Trump administration, if they want to fire people, they should be able to fire people. If they have people that would do the job better, that they would accomplish the mandate that the American people gave them, then so be it. You're fired, which Donald Trump is very good at saying. Did you see the story about Mark Cuban? This is another funny one. He was very vocal in his support of Vice President Kamala Harris during her campaign. He faced some backlash in the last few days on social media because users say that he has been deleting posts about his endorsement. He's ashamed of his decision, and he should be. He should be ashamed of the decision of supporting Kamala Harris. I mean, what person in their right mind would do so? And particularly somebody who supposedly is as smart as this guy is. Cuban addressed the issue directly, stating, "I've always gone back and deleted tweets." He said for years, same with 2020 and 2016. He mentioned that the now closed app that he helped develop for deleting social media posts, implying this was part of his regular practice rather than a reaction to the election outcome. You buying that? You believe it? In the final days leading up to the election, Cuban made headlines with his sharp critiques of President Donald Trump. You remember his visit with The View when he argued that Trump was never seen around strong, intelligent women? It went viral. And some of those strong, intelligent women turned out in big numbers for Donald Trump. He later acknowledged that it was a mistake, especially after President Biden's controversial remarks about Trump supporters being garbage. Cuban's willingness to admit he overstepped reflects the intense polarization surrounding the campaign, wrote CNN. Despite his criticism, Cuban swiftly congratulated President-elect Donald Trump after results were finalized, saying that he posted on X, "Congrats at the real Donald Trump. You won fair and square," followed by a shout-out to Elon Musk, congratulating him as well, adding Godspeed, and offered to help any way that he can. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Firmin Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Firmin Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you could trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Firmin Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Firmin, Matthew Firmin. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Firmin Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Firmin Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Firmin Ford online at firminford.com, firminford.com. Several liberal media pundits were very disparaging about Latino voters who supported Donald Trump in a very big way this year, and said that they were racist, sexist, and that their vote for Donald Trump was against their own self-interest.
Y'all voted with Stephen Miller and David Duke and against your own sisters, and chose Kamala Harris with 60% of their votes. So you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, sisters, and abuelas from here on in.
But my question was whether you wanted to see mass deportations. Do you want to see mass deportations?
So the first thing that we need to do is close the border. More than 10 million people illegally entered the country. They have to be deportation. So there is no other way around. They have to be deportation. They have to be
deportation
we
camps.
have to respect the laws.
Do you want
I'm
to
not
see
saying deportation camps.
Do you want to see people in camps rounded up and put in camps?
No.
Isn't that what you voted for? Isn't that what you voted for?
Democrats need to be mature, and they need to be honest, and they need to say, yes, there's misogyny, but it's not just misogyny from white men. Mm-hmm. It's misogyny from Hispanic men.
Right.
It's misogyny from black men, things we've all been talking about, who do not want a woman leading them. Might be race issues with Hispanics. They don't want a black woman as president of the United States.
We need to talk about is whether or not, folks just had the wool pulled over their eyes. And maybe they were voting on economic issues, but at the end of the day, maybe voting against their own self-interest.
A lot of Hispanic voters have problems with black candidates.
Right.
A lot
and
of
with other Hispanics. You've got some that don't like each other.
We talk a lot about these different demographics and these assumptions of where they're going to go. Latinos in Texas, a district that's 97% Latino, went 75 percentage points for Donald Trump. Why?
Misogyny.
It's on the border. The border crisis is on their doorstep. And they were begging people to care about it for years. We need to take some lessons.
That's what that was.
The number of Latinos and Latinas that voted for Donald Trump despite his racist rhetoric, it kind of makes me want to pull my hair out a little bit here, Paola, because not only is it voting against your best self-interest here.
I don't think I have to tell you who some of those people were, some of the usuals on CNN, MSNBC, and the View, and some of the others. This is just the beginning of what is being described as a mass deportation operation, and President-elect Donald Trump believes he has the man for the job. Thomas Homan, who President-elect Trump appointed as his border czar. And by the way, you know how Kamala Harris and Joe Biden was quick to say that she was not the border czar? She didn't like the term border czar. Thomas Homan gladly accepts the description of his job as being the border czar. He embraces it. And he has a clear message for any of the Democrat governors, Democrat big city mayors who oppose the planned mass deportation.
But look, if they're not willing to help, then get the hell out of the way, because ICE is going to do the job.
If you're not going to help, get the hell out of the way. That's what he said, and that's what he means. Trump announced on Sunday that Holman will be appointed as his border czar and will be in charge of the borders and all, quote, deportation of illegal aliens back to their country of origin in his new administration. Before the announcement, Holman responded to comments by Democrat governors who have indicated that they won't work with the administration on any deportation efforts. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, for example, said last week that, quote, every tool in the toolbox has got to be used to protect our citizens, to protect our residents, and protect our states, and to hold the line on democracy and the rule of law as a basic principle. She said last week, no, absolutely not, when asked if state police would help with deportations. Now, how does a governor in the same sentence talk about protecting her residents, talk about protecting democracy, talk about protecting the rule of law, but yet she's protecting illegals? Somebody help me reconcile that. Somebody explain that to me. Well, I think someone from her office is going to need to try to help explain it to Holman, because he's not buying it. He said that some sanctuary jurisdictions will work with administrations behind the scene. He said he doesn't care if they're out front or not. He says that yes, though, it's going to be a massive undertaking, and in the end, it's going to be less expensive than feeding and housing the illegals in the long run.
I can guarantee you this, the cost of this operation will be a hell of a lot less than we're spending now taking care of millions of people who aren't supposed to be here. These sanctuary cities, they're in the first Trump administration. It's not going to stop. It's certainly not helpful. We would like the force multiplier to have, actually have access to county jails where the worst of the worst are being locked up. It'd be great to have access to Rikers Island in New York and Cook County Jail in Chicago, which we're not allowed to go into. But I think President Trump's going to, once again, file a lawsuit with DOJ and take the federal funding away. I think a lot of the sanctuary cities are actually working with us behind the scenes. You're not going to say it. But with all the alien crime and the young women being, sexually assaulted and murdered, some sheriffs have been coming forward working behind the scenes. But look, if they're not willing to help, then get the hell out of the way, because ICE is going to do the job.
ICE is going to do their job, and I promise you, this man means it. While he said that it would be useful to have the force multiplier of assistance from state and local governments and for agents to have access to county jails, he made it very clear he's going to get it done whether they help or not. He said whether they send 100 people or 200 people just depends on how the local governments respond. He said we have a mandate. I think the American people just gave President Trump a mandate. That's why he's elected, to secure the border, save lives, and deport people, especially national security threats and public safety threats. He said, so if you're not going to help, step aside, but don't get in our way. Holman said that the immediate focus will be on those illegal immigrants with criminal convictions or charges, as had been the focus under the first Trump administration. He said it's not going to be a massive sweep of neighborhoods. It's not going to be a massive raids. He says it's going to be targeted enforcement operations. And you have the liberals, though, on these networks telling you, well, they're going to be coming into your neighborhood and taking your neighbors away. They're going to be snatching up little kids and women and children. Well, that's not exactly how it's going to be done. They made it very clear. Holman's made it very clear over the past few days, and he argues that with the millions of people having entered illegally across the southern border under the Biden administration, that there has to be consequences, and that, yes, there may be some families who are deported if they're here illegally.
Because you let them stay. If there's no consequences, you're never going to solve the southern border. There has to be consequences. Look, if the court, and when judge issues that court order, it has to be executed. I mean, we have to remove them. If we don't, if the judge's order doesn't mean anything at the end of this due process, the great taxpayer expect, if the judge's order doesn't mean anything, it's not executed, then what the hell are we doing? Get rid of the immigration court. Obviously, the orders don't mean anything anymore. Take the border patrol off the border, because there's no consequence for entering this country legally. You can't demand due process. You have the right to see a judge. I have a right to claim asylum. I have a right to, I agree. You can claim asylum. Certainly you have that right. But you can't demand due process and ignore the final decision. That means due process means nothing. So, yeah, 90% of them will be order removed. They got to be removed, because that's the way the legal system's set up. And there's no other option other than just closing our eyes and letting this continue. So, there will be a massive deportation operation because we had a massive, never seen before illegal immigration with 90% will be ordered removed. It's common sense. So it's not about hate. It's not about discrimination. It's not about being racist. It's about those people enter the country illegally, which is a crime, and get ordered removed by a federal judge, have to go home.
And that's what I just can't wrap my mind around is how you have the mainstream media, as they're continuing to grieve their loss, but how they can try to make the argument that this is inhumane, that this is sexist, that it's racist. If these people came here illegally, they need to go home. Now, he also said that he feels like there'll be a large number leave under self-deportation, that if you cut off the supply of cash, cut off housing, cut off food, cut off the services, they'll decide this isn't so great after all and go back home. And I think he's going to get the cooperation. I mean, Mayor Eric Adams in New York has already indicated he's ready to cooperate, that he's going to stop issuing the vouchers for the hotels in New York City. So who is Tom Homan? He is the second Trump appointee announced over the weekend. Susie Wiles, the White House Chief of Staff, was first. He ran Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, ICE, in an acting capacity in 2017, 2018 before announcing his retirement. It was going to be a tough road to get Senate confirmation because of the Democrats. Holman led ICE's enforcement removal operations in 2013 onward until former President Barack Obama, or under Obama, and had planned to retire from public service to a consulting job in 2017 when President Trump was elected and called him back and asked him to stay on. He is a no-nonsense type of guy. With Trump's announcement that Holman would be filling this position, he left his job at Fox News. He's been a contributor for the last few years and will become one of Trump's most trusted advisors, and he's the man to watch. It's going to be interesting to see how he pulls this off because of all of the jobs that are going to be announced over the next few weeks leading up to the January 20th swearing in. Tom Homan has the absolute toughest because people are going to be watching him. And the immigration and inflation, of course, is going to be high on the list too. And those who are put in place in Treasury and the positions that are going to need to help get inflation down and get our spending under control, they'll be under the microscope as well. But Tom Homan single-handedly is going to be one of the most watched people in this new Trump administration in the coming years. But I think he's up to it. I think he's up to the task. I think we're going to see a lot of nail-biting and a lot of screaming and crying by the liberals as they see these people who are put on airplanes and buses and sent back where they came from. And is there anything racist about that? Is there anything inhumane about that? You tell me. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Whether you're replacing a broken appliance or maybe you're just upgrading, you're totally remodeling the kitchen, when it's time to get those new appliances, when you're ready for them, you don't want to have to wait weeks or even months to get started using them, right? Well, that's not the case when you shop with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse. With over 11,000 square feet and 1,500 appliances at any given time, you can buy today and use today quite often. I'm talking about shopping with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse in Pickens. It's worth the short drive over to Pickens. Jeff, Johnny, Kyle, the whole team over there, they'll take good care of you. They have an award-winning service department, expert installation, extended warranties, and at Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they treat you like family. You're more than just a credit card swipe to all the team over there. Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they're proud to offer Speed Queen, the only washer and dryers with manufacturer's warranties that cover parts and labor. You owe it to yourself if you're looking for a new appliance to head over to Pickens to Discounted Appliance Warehouse online at dawpickens.com, dawpickens.com. You know, there's a tradition that the newly elected president visits with the outgoing president, and the first ladies do likewise. Well, Melania Trump has declined an invitation by First Lady Jill Biden to visit the White House, citing the FBI's raid on Mar-a-Lago in 2022 as the reason for her decision. According to sources, Melania feels strongly that the raid authorized under the Biden administration is part of an investigation into classified documents that were at Mar-a-Lago under Donald Trump's supervision. She viewed it as an invasion of privacy. The raid included searches through Melania's personal belongings, which she previously described as an upsetting and invasive action. Traditionally, the outgoing and incoming first ladies meet at the White House while their husbands are talking business, I guess. They have a tour and a tea. Melania participated when Michelle Obama was leaving after the 2016 election victory. However, this year, she's not going, which you can't blame her, can you? I mean, she doesn't need a tour of the White House. She knows what it's like. And I'm sure she doesn't want to sit down and go through the uncomfortable visit with Dr. Jill. So kudos to Melania for standing up. Kudos for her of saying, look, I'm not going to do that. No reason for her to, really. On the text line, Ginger writes, had to laugh when I turned on the Morning Joe for a minute. They're trying to backtrack on their wokeness so fast it will make your head spin. They sound like Republicans, but I hope the people recognize they already told us who they really are. Ginger, we know exactly who people like Morning Joe, how they are. And I can promise you, we're not going to forget. Tony writes on the text line, Joey, are you as happy as me when you see libtards breaking down as Trump names his cabinet members, especially his border czar? Oh, Tony, I love Tom Homan. And you're right. It is funny to watch them just go into a full meltdown. And again, this is the toughest issue that I have, because I can't imagine why any American, and maybe you can help explain this to me. Text me, email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. Why any American would want to protect an illegal alien. I don't get it. I just simply don't get why Whoopi Goldberg and the ladies on The View, and why Morning Joe and the MSNBC, all those folks over on CNN, why they feel like they need to protect, as Tom Homan called them, criminals. They came here illegally. So how is it sexist? How is it racist? How are you discriminating against them when they have no rights? They don't have the protections that you and I have as American citizens. Texter says, these celebrities and liberal elites have an overinflated sense of self-importance. In this delusional state, they cannot comprehend that the average American does not care whether they're here or not. We care about teaching our children godly values, being able to provide for our families, and having a country we're proud of. Now, this is in response, of course, of my conversation yesterday. If you missed it, go back and listen to yesterday's show, where some of these, like Barbara Streisand and some of these people, have said that they threatened in 2016 and some again in 2020, if Trump had won then, that they were going to leave the country. Now, it's interesting they're still here. Now they're threatening to leave again. Some of you text and said, hey, let's start a GoFundMe page and raise the money to help send them wherever they want to go. Texter says, these people who stated they'll leave the U.S. will profit with their stocks when the economy booms. When they give up their citizenship, I hope they take their money with them and invest in another country. I had an IRA that doubled in the past 4 years, in the 4 years under Trump. As soon as Biden came, the value dropped. Dale in Landrum says, I wholeheartedly volunteer my support to help pack the bags of all the liberal celebrities. Sign me up. All right, Dale, I'll let you know when we're going to have a packing party. Texter says, just like their careers, it's all smoke and mirrors. They're not going anywhere. Who would want to leave this country? And particularly some of them who are just so pampered and spoiled with what we have here. Look, I've had the good fortune to travel all over the world. And there's some beautiful places. But there's not a place on this earth like the good old United States of America. They know it. They're not going anywhere. Let them talk. I wish they would. Look, I don't care if they move away. I'm still scratching my head trying to figure out why they paid Oprah $1 million and some of these others. That is just, and I'm sorry to go down this path again, but the idea that they ended up with like $20 million in debt, and they spent $20 million paying these celebrities to be on stage, that in itself shows you that Kamala Harris was not fit to be in elective office and not fit to be president if she makes those kind of decisions. Texter, good morning, Joey. Does anyone even know who Barbra Streisand is? What relevant thing has she done in the last 40 years? Very true. Very true. You have to be older like me to understand who Barbra Streisand is. Look, I remember when Barbra Streisand wasn't quite so political. She has a beautiful voice. I remember a time that I enjoyed hearing her music. Now I don't, simply because I know what she stands for. Texter, this is Roger, says, Joey, I would donate if all these musicians will leave. Get them the hell out of here. They don't love America. All right, Roger, I'll let you know when we have that GoFundMe site up. Texter, oh, here it is. Texter says, let's start a GoFundMe page to move the Hollywood stars out of the U.S. I think you would raise a lot of money. You know, I think there probably are a lot of people who would gladly donate. Interesting story from Joe Rogan yesterday. You know, there was a lot of speculation when he announced that he would be interviewing Donald Trump. And then the very next week, interviewed J.D. Vance as well. And there's a lot of conversation about whether or not Kamala Harris would sit down with him. Rogan shared that he was eager to have Kamala Harris on the Joe Rogan Experience before the election. But despite his open invitation, he said, the interview just never materialized. He revealed that Harris's team had specific conditions, including limitations on the topics that could be discussed. That they wanted to control it because they knew she couldn't sit there for several hours like the typical Joe Rogan interview and answer the questions and just have a discussion. Rogan's response, he said, I don't give a, you know what, get her in here, he said, emphasizing his willingness to talk about anything in order to have an honest, unfiltered conversation, he said. Rogan, of course, endorsed Donald Trump the day before the election after he had interviewed both Trump and J.D. Vance. He is known for avoiding direct political endorsements, but Joe Rogan knew that this was a rare moment in podcast history and our country is at a crossroads, and he felt like after sitting down for several hours with Donald Trump that Donald Trump was the man for the job. He argued that Trump's long-form interview on his podcast allowed listeners to see a human side of the candidate, something he says resonated with his millions of followers. He expressed frustration over the conditions that Harris's campaign had set. They requested the interview to take place off-site, limiting it to just 1 hour. Rogan likes the lengthy, in-depth discussions in his Austin studio where everybody else goes. He said he declined the offer. He believed the best way to get to know Harris was through a candid, unrestricted conversation. He said, I bet there's a person in there indicating his genuine interest in connecting with Harris beyond politics. She wanted no part of it. Another sticking point for the Harris campaign was whether the episode would be edited. Rogan made it clear that his podcast is unedited, maintaining its authenticity. He shared, they want to know if I edit. I was like, there's not going to be any editing. There's no editing. We're not going to edit. Now, I'm sure she wanted to edit. He said this no editing policy is a hallmark of the Rogan show, allowing guests to speak freely and unfiltered. She doesn't like to speak freely and certainly not unfiltered. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com. And I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at MyPillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.